Hold on. It looks like, yeah, we're live. All right. All right. We've got our stream issues fixed here. So thank you everyone for tuning in here on a Thursday night. Me and Pete have had about 2 takes already on the show. So this is what live streaming is all about here. So welcome to the Awesemo MMA DFS strategy show for UFC 261. Of course, we're sponsored by Monkey Knife Fight. Pete, third time's charm here. Opening question: roster construction with the title fights and using Fantasy Cruncher and groups with these 3 title fights.
What's going on, everybody? Thanks for joining us. I definitely think roster construction for this event, because there's 13 fights and 3 title fights, you have to prioritize the title fights, right? Like, I feel like you have to touch on at least 2 in your lineups and set groups on Fantasy Cruncher. Over on Awesemo, I think is an awesome tool, no pun intended, to use in order to get unique. What I like to do is, for me, I like to take into consideration fight footage, maybe even odds, what I'm seeing, my gut, and then I will lean one way or another, and I will make some groups with, let's say I liked all the favorites in the title fights. I would set a group for, all 3 of those favorites in the title fights and tell my lineups to get at least 2 of them. Now, if I wanted to get different and get unique depending on the contest, if it's a 150 max, I have to get different. So say I wanted, 2 of the fights, and I would say, let's go. I got to get at least 2 of these 6 fighters, and I will mix and match my lineups. But it's all based on, what you can afford, what you're willing to risk, and also the contest. So 150 maxes are completely different from 20 entries, but I will say prioritize the title fights for sure.
Also, this is a little hat tip. If you are a newer DFS player and you are turning in and maybe you start playing on DraftKings, when you get those tickets on DraftKings, enter in those contests on NBA to win tickets. Because that's what I do. I've won a couple of tickets for the big GPP on Saturday. So actually, I have not started hand building lineups quite yet, but I was texting Pete earlier today. I really do believe a poplar trio, when people are putting together fighters in the main event, will be Kamaru Usman, Rose Namajunas, and Valentina Shevchenko. Now, here's a question. What about the thought process of not rostering a fighter in the main event? I think it's going to separate yourself from the field.
Yeah, 100%, right? Like, I feel like everybody's going to do the box score watching and see how the last fight played out. Kamaru Usman really exploded onto the scene with his performance over Jorge Masvidal. You talk about takedowns, tons of control time. My thinking on that fight would be like, maybe Masvidal's takedown defense is really on point, and he's able to stifle the wrestling of Kamaru Usman, and it's mainly held up against the cage, a lot of control time against the cage, maybe not accruing enough points, to justify his salary. But for me, I really like Kamaru Usman in the fight. Outside of getting caught with a lucky shot, I really feel like he's a strong play. But avoiding the main event would definitely get you different. And picking the right side on the other 2 title fights would definitely shoot you up the rankings.
Yeah, I feel it is, if Kamaru Usman wins, I feel it's a very low probability that he's not optimal. So, if you're not putting Kamaru Usman in your lineup, that has got to be your prayer to take down one of these big GPPs. Of course, appreciate everyone in here on a Thursday. Do want to let you know about free premium data and tools we have over at Awesemo.com. You can check out the MMA fighter ranking. So be sure to check out that as you are developing your lineups here for UFC 261. Of course, if there's ever a time that you're unable to watch this show live right here on YouTube, you can catch it, a part of the Awesemo Podcast Network. Just go to awesemo.com/podcasts and be sure to hit that Awesemo MMA podcast. Hit that 5-star rating and review to help us out. And of course, be sure when you leave that 5-star rating to leave your Twitter handle or email address for your chance to be eligible to win a free week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. One winner will be awarded every Friday, and reviews will be eligible to win for up to 1 year. So let's get right into the main event rematch between Kamaru Usman and Jorge Masvidal. And I said this on my podcast last night. I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be tuning in on Saturday night that want to see a baptism of Kamaru Usman by Jorge Masvidal. I mean, look, Masvidal clearly a puncher's chance. Now, when you look back at the stats from their first meeting. It's crazy the output that Kamaru Usman had in this one. 263 total strikes landed. 94 of those were significant, and he was 5 of 16 in takedowns. Now, I think that's a critical number when we're talking about the FanDuel side of the equation. If you do want to play FanDuel and potentially a Jorge Masvidal at $16, potentially maybe if you're looking to hammer one of these underdogs there, you could be able to rack up some points with takedown defenses. I think the question, Pete, becomes here is how does Jorge Masvidal get it done? I think a key to Jorge Masvidal getting this job done is leg kicks where he doesn't get taken down.
Yeah, it's interesting. I do think that Jorge Masvidal has more than a puncher's chance, but a lot of people are just saying a puncher's chance because they think that Kamaru Usman is just so skilled in all departments, especially the wrestling. In his previous bout against Gilbert Burns, you got to see him showcase his boxing. Now, what happens a lot is fighters start to fall in love with their hands and they get away from their strengths. And I do wonder, training under Trevor Whitman, if Kamaru Usman's really kind of just admiring his work in the octagon and is going to try to strike a little too much in this fight. But if he goes back to the takedown well and, the rinse and repeat strategy of taking Masvidal down, making him work, tiring him out throughout 5 rounds, I think that he can definitely, break the slate. So I am leaning Kamaru Usman still in the rematch, but I do think that a full camp Jorge Masvidal will be better than a short notice step in Jorge Masvidal. I mean, he's going to be in better shape, well prepared, probably have some answers for some takedowns, but I do feel like there is a skill gap between them as far as putting it all together. And I think that Jorge Masvidal, if you look at his resume, experience speaks for itself. But I don't really love this stylistic matchup against Kamaru Usman, right? Like, I feel like his kryptonite is facing guys that can really just nullify his striking by taking him down, putting him on his back. So I still favor Kamaru Usman. Of the underdogs in the title fights, I'm not in love with Masvidal. At his salary, of course, if he wins, he's going to break the slate. But I do feel like there are some underdogs in the other title fights that could come through.
Yeah, any of these underdogs, if they come in, they're going to be optimal just because of their salary. And we're going to talk about Rose here in a minute because that's something I do want to talk to you about. Mentioned some questions that we got in on Twitter earlier from Hunter. He said, a question to each of you. Do you think Usman stays true to his word, or is he just blowing hot air again when he says he intends to strike and seek the knockout? I don't believe him.
If so, that's dangerous, right? Like that's, you're playing with fire because Jorge Masvidal has put a lot of people away. And he can definitely catch you with a fast shot that you're not expecting, take advantage of you maybe overextending on a shot. Kamaru Usman did get rocked in his previous bout against Gilbert Burns. Let's not forget about that. So I do think that Jorge Masvidal can even win rounds here. Like I'm not expecting it to be a flawless performance from Kamaru Usman because I think that Masvidal will win the striking rounds, or not all of them, but some of them. I think it's going to be like maybe 4 rounds to 1 or 3 rounds to 2, but Kamaru Usman should resort to takedowns to really solidify rounds.
Yeah. Here's another question that came in from Hunter. He said, he goes, given below, does Pete, a fighter, feel the turnaround is too quick? And it was a quoted tweet from Mark Ramondi, where Ramondi says, in the story, Usman reveals shortly after his win over Masvidal last year, he was hospitalized with a severe bout of COVID-19 and lost 17 pounds in 8 days.
I mean,
he's fought since then.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really, right? Like, I'm not really worried about that. Granted, there's tons of X factors when you go into a fight that we can't really take into consideration because we're not that person. We don't know. We don't know what's going on in their headspace, whether their mind's focused on the fight, they have distractions, whether they're battling an illness, an injury. Those are things outside of our control. But I would say no. I would be more worried from a technical aspect or, of him maybe getting caught with that big shot from Gilbert Burns than I would about an illness several months ago.
Of course, appreciate you, everyone that's in here on a Thursday evening. Of course, if you're not subscribed to Awesemo on YouTube, be sure to do that. We have great shows each and every day. Here's a little teaser for you. You're getting another dose of me and Pete tomorrow, as we've got a special monkey knife fight show coming for you. So be on the lookout that tomorrow after the MLB show. That'll be on at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So you get a triple dose of myself and Pete this week for UFC 261. And of course, we do got that great promo going on over at awesemo.com. Get 50% off a Also Plus MMA monthly pass, $14.98. You got to take advantage of that, because not only does that get you for UFC 261, it's going to get you for next month's pay-per-view as well. So you got to take advantage of that deal. An awesome deal we got going over there. One of the things that's a part of our premium package is that Top Fighter tool. It's a great tool to use that Alex puts together. Obviously, you can compare ownership, but also that top 6 percentage is one of the tools that I really like to use over there. So be sure to take advantage of that. All you got to do is use the promo code UFC 261. If you don't enter that promo code, you're not going to get the discount. So be sure to enter that promo code UFC 261. Let's move on to the co-main event. It is the defending champion, Weili Zhang, defending her title against the former champion in Rose Namajunas. Pete, everything about this fight has not been about their actual abilities. It's been about the comments made by Rose Namajunas over the past couple of days. And I saw this comment in our Slack account earlier today, and I want to pull it up, and I thought it was a really good comment about this matchup. And I actually sent it to Pete a little bit earlier in terms of the volume aspect of this fight, and potentially going 5 rounds. And could Rose Namajunas really be our best play as a underdog in these title fights?
Yeah, I think out of the 3 championship fights, I think that Rose Namajunas is my favorite underdog. I really do. And I think that's going to be a common stance. And the reason I think that Rose Namajunas is a nice underdog is because of what she's done. She was already a champ. She's had, high caliber opponents facing across from her throughout her UFC career. She's faced adversity, and I think that she could actually bring a new, let's say, strategy against Weili Zhang. Like, on the outside, I do think that she can, work her excellent boxing and her crisp striking. But I do feel like we haven't seen Weili Zhang get tested in the grappling department as far as defending takedowns. Now, it's hard to really think of Rose Namajunas, the grappler, but if you really think back on The Ultimate Fighter, even in some of her previous bouts, even against Paige Van Zandt, obviously that's the skill gap is completely different. Weili Zhang against Paige Van Zandt. But it showed the potential of the grappling route for Rose Namajunas. Now, her volume for striking isn't really the best. She's more of a sniper on the outside. So I understand if you're hesitant about plugging her in your lineup. Yes, it's an appealing salary. But it's if she wins a decision, does it even really matter? Does she even pay off? I think that she can, because I think that she's going to look to secure takedowns, maybe even test the cardio of Weili Zhang, try to back her up a little bit. It's not an easy fight by any means, but I do think that Weili Zhang is extremely talented. But I think that Rose Namajunas is really, really talented as well. And I like her in the matchup. And I'm actually siding with Rose Namajunas in the fight, to be honest. I have a feeling that she gets her down and tests her submission abilities.
That to me is a question mark. Can Rose get down there, and can this become a little bit of a submission game? Now, if you want to look back at Rose in her 5-round fight against Joanna, of course, this was the second time they fought each other. In that matchup, Rose landed 108 total strikes and 105 significant strikes. She did have 1 takedown, as I recall. I believe her DraftKings score was 104. I believe that's the number I sent over to you earlier today. And I'll mention this question over in our Slack channel. CR Counts asked this, and I think it's a good kind of fight to talk about this. He goes, possibly a broader DraftKings question, looking back at the scoring changes for DraftKings, what's been the biggest takeaways, and have salaries started to reflect that at all? I don't think salaries have really reflected that. I mean, to me, the biggest takeaway is this fight, for example, if it is all striking, and let's just say they your total strikes and your significant strikes match up exactly. So you're talking 0.8 points, per strike there. I think if you're a Rose backer, if she wins, because of that salary, it's going to help you out. But if you're a Weili Zhang backer and it's all striking, no knockdowns, she doesn't get a finish, I don't know if she's optimal.
Yeah, it's not like, the DraftKings system is bumping up grapplers. It's not like if Habib, was out there and for some reason was only like a minus 150 favorite, and they put a 10,000 price tag on him because they know his style of how he likes to, take people down, maul them with control time, relentless takedowns, ground and pound, so on and so forth. We're getting just a direct, relation between the odds into the salaries. And that's where you can find spots to target. You find nice, mismatches or even mispriced fighters, whether they're too high or, undervalued. And that's where you can take advantage of the system for sure.
Looking over on the Fanduel side of the equation here, $21 for Weili, $17 for Rose over on Super Draft. Maybe if you want to take Rose Namajunas as a champion, 2.2 times as a multipliers champion, 1.45 times in your flex spot. If maybe you want to go Weili as your champion, 1.75. I feel like the co-main event will be a very popular fight when we look at ownership.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And trust me, I love Weili Zhang. But when you're looking at, DraftKings and you're trying to get different, you have to try to pick your spots of where you're going to get different and, kind of like increase the likelihood of it happening. And I do think that a fighter of Rose Namajunas' caliber can really, showcase some skills. Could be a close fight, could be back and forth, could not even be a decisive fight. But I will have plenty of Rose Namajunas exposure. But I would also recommend, making sure that you get some Weili Zhang as well.
Just saying, when you sign up for that promo we got going on, you get ownership projections so you can see it there. Because one of the things I always say when I look at ownership projections, I'm looking for fighters under 20%.
Yeah, for sure. And then if you like the matchup, you hammer it.
Yeah. I missed this question from Miles. He says, should we be looking for stacks for fighters from the same country gym? Malkoun and Whitaker last week as an example.
That's a good question. I usually like to back, gyms, not always. It's not like a steady thing for me to do. It's not like, oh my God, American Top Team's on their roster, every fighter from American Top Team or City Kickboxing. But I do like it when a whole team or multiple members are fighting on the same card because it means that they, have prepared for it together. They've been around each other a lot. But I mean, it's kind of fighting's an individual sport once the cage door locks. So none of that really matters.
Yeah, it's something to pay attention to there. Of course, when you talk about Rose Namajunas and Kamaru Usman, both trained by Trevor Whitman. So there's something you can kind of put together between those two as we go into it. Now, of course, our third title fight is Valentina Shevchenko versus Jessica Andrade. Shevchenko, 9,500 over on DraftKings, 6,700 for the challenger here. And Shevchenko, a 4.5-1 betting favorite in this one. But one of the things we've seen with Shevchenko is more of a grappling we've seen in her past couple of fights.
Yeah, Shevchenko is going to be the matador. Jessica Andrade is going to be the bull. Every now and then you get nicked by the bull's horn, but you have to be careful here. Paired up against Jessica Andrade, I think that if she connects with the shot, she can wobble you on the feet. If she gets you against the cage, she can lift you over your head, slam you to the mat. But I do feel like, a fighter of Valentina Shevchenko's caliber comes around, once in a very long time. I really like her. I wish that the Nunes fights happened later on in her career so that we could have seen more like the two icons, at the pinnacle of their career rather than so early. But, I do think that Valentina Shevchenko can light Jessica Andrade up from the outside. Initially, I was worried about the matchup, right, Jason? Because I was thinking about how, Jennifer Maia had success against Shevchenko, how she was able to, put her in some bad spots, really test her will. Then I started to think to myself, like, man, is that a result of Shevchenko just losing a round or two? Or could it have been a result of the smaller cage? Now I'm thinking to myself that I think Shevchenko can really dance around Andrade, pick her apart from the outside. I don't hate Jessica Andrade as far as an underdog. I like her more than I do like Jorge Masvidal. But for me, I think Shevchenko can catch her with a knee, a kick up the middle, something that Andrade is not going to see coming.
Let me throw a number at you. Let me see if you recognize this number. 6.38.
Yeah, that is Jessica Andrade's insane output, strikes landed per minute. So, if you're in front of her, she's landing tons of volume on you, which can result in a ton of points. especially with the DraftKings scoring system between total strikes and significant strikes. If Shevchenko decides not to move around and she's going to be there and be a bag in front of Andrade, that volume alone, maybe even in a loss, hard for me to say that a fighter in a loss could pay off more than some other underdogs, but it can happen. I will say Jessica Andrade, her volume, striking volume, and her 3 takedowns landed per 15 minutes makes her an appealing target for sure. But I like Shevchenko quite a bit.
Is Shevchenko an appealing fighter on FanDuel, not just because of the potential of getting the stoppage, but Jessica Andrade is a fighter that we've seen go for a lot of takedowns?
You know, I was thinking about that, but like it's Jessica Andrade's takedown style, right? Like she likes to do a lot of overhead takedowns instead of chain wrestling. You know, a lot off of a high crotch, a lot of high C lips, which I think is interesting. I just don't think that she could pull those moves off against Valentina Shevchenko. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised to see Shevchenko put Andrade on her back and put her in a bad spot and start to punish her from top position.
And we should note that Andrade does have a 4-inch reach advantage in this fight. I think in terms of the 3 title fights, this fight, Shevchenko Andrade, may be the fight I have the least exposure in terms of these 3 title fights.
It's interesting, right? Like
it's a high price tag for Shevchenko at 9,500. At 9,500, okay, that means I'm spending $100 more than Kamaru Usman, and we know the type of ceiling that Kamaru Usman has. If Shevchenko goes out there, she's got I need 110, 115, 120 points.
You know what? I mean, just because we haven't seen like Shevchenko scored well, but we haven't seen her put up a Kamaru Usman type of, you know, let's say performance, if you will. I wonder, right? Like, let's say the Kamaru Usman Jorge Masvidal fight's a lot closer than we think, right? Let's say it comes down to 3 rounds to 2. So now you're getting 3 successful Kamaru Usman rounds versus maybe Shevchenko 5 successful rounds. I think that makes it, that argument kind of makes you think like maybe in some lineups I will avoid the main event.
Because here's the thing. So when you look at the 5-round fights that Shevchenko has had as champion,
Yep.
So first off, you go against Joanna, 89 strikes landed, 5 takedowns. The next time was against Shevchenko, 42 strikes landed, 1 takedown. Against Jennifer Meyer in her last fight, 62 strikes landed, 5 takedowns. So I think that if there is a buyer beware on Shevchenko, the concern has to be about volume. And if she doesn't have that volume, does the points result come from takedowns?
Yeah, I think the takedowns could happen. And I mean, I think Shevchenko is so skilled everywhere. Just do whatever you want. Whatever happens naturally. Pick her apart from the outside. You know, Andrade is going to have to close the distance and get close to you in order to win. So when she gets close to you, fight for those underhooks, trip her, put her on her back, and start to really dominate her from there.
Of course, we are sponsored by Monkey Knife Fight. Head over to monkeyknifefight.com where you are in charge is player props contest over there. And be sure when you sign up, use that promo code Awesemo for an instant first match deposit up to $100. As I mentioned earlier, tomorrow here on Also, myself and Pete, we are going to be breaking down how you play and win over at Monkey Knife Fight. Also, we're going to take you through these 5 fights that are going to be on pay-per-view, look at the fantasy points, and also significant strikes landed to help you win some money there on Monkey Knife Fight. Be sure to use that promo code Awesemo when you sign up so you get an instant first match deposit of up to $100. Move on. Next, we have got a matchup that is a rematch from back in the day, back in 2010 at Ring of Combat. Uriah Hall, Chris Weidman. Weidman actually is right now a small betting favorite in this one. He is now minus 125, plus 105 on Uriah Hall, of course. But when you look at the DFS side of this thing, Uriah Hall, 8,300, 7,900 for Chris Weidman. The big story with Chris Weidman is now living in South Carolina, now training at Upstate Karate. Ray Longo did come down for 3 weeks to help in preparations for this one. Ray Longo will be in his corner on Saturday night there. in Jacksonville. But of course, if you're not familiar, Upstate Karate, that is Steven and Ray Thompson's gym. To me, if you want to be, and I think this is one fight on this card I think is critical because of the salary. This may be the fight you have to hit on in terms of GPP. If you want to be a Chris Weidman backer, Pete, it's plain and simple. Take him to the ground. Do not stand with Uriah Hall. On the betting side, though, if you want to look for a little leverage, go Uriah Hall wins in round 3.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. I'm excited for this fight. I do think that it's a sneaky fight to target because of Chris Weidman's grappling appeal versus Uriah Hall's finishing appeal as far as like knocking people out. I will say that in addition to training with Upstate Karate, you can actually see that Weidman's been cross-training at Gym O as well. And Gym O is a nice gym that has some good fighters that can really push Chris Weidman there and get him prepared for the fight. And it's less about Weidman's skill because I feel like he has a lot of skill. His striking's kind of been always but I think it's more about can his chin hold up. If his chin can hold up, I really like him in this fight. Like I really do. I feel like he can close the gap, test Uriah Hall's, take down the fence, rinse and repeat, take him down. But I can't trust his chin at this point, Jason. He's been knocked out so many times. He's going up against a very, very dangerous counter striker and a guy that if he decided to go first and be the aggressor, I think he could cut through Chris Weidman like a hot knife through butter. I really do. It's just like Chris Weidman can have moments in the fight, but I feel like Uriah Hall, at this point, I trust him more than I do Chris Weidman. But I would recommend, guys, splitting exposure and having this, this lineup in a decent amount of your, this fight in a decent amount of your lineup. So I feel like it's going to be optimal one way or another. Weidman takes him to takedown city, or Uriah Hall maybe gets a couple knockdowns and ultimately a finish.
There was a time where Chris Weidman was great. It's been a long time since that.
A long time, brother.
So you're talking about, if you want to talk about 2015, defeated Vitor Belfort to retain the UFC middleweight title. Since that fight, lost to Luke Rockhold, lost to Yoel Romero, lost to Gegard Mousasi, gets a third-round submission against Calvin Gastelum. Wasn't looking good early on in that fight. Lost to Jacare, lost to Dom Reyes, and then a win against Omari Akhmedov where he was winding down as that fight ended. So this is, I'm not expecting the Chris Weidman of 2013, 2014 to walk into the door. The Chris Weidman of 2021 is walking through the door, but Uriah Hall has always been a guy that he's tough to trust. And sometimes it's, are you going to throw?
Yeah. I mean, he kind of does the Tyron Woodley where he just backs himself against the cage and waits for the perfect shot. And sometimes it doesn't happen. I mean, if you think about that Bevon Lewis fight, that's what happened for the large majority of it. And then he caught him with a shot, knocked him out, third round, KO. So I will say that, Chris Weidman to this point, I just can't trust it. It's appealing because of the grappling and the scoring system. But, I think that Uriah Hall, is going to capitalize. And especially because Uriah Hall lost the previous fight. Like, he definitely wants to get a victory over Chris Weidman here.
2010 is a long time ago, bro.
Yeah.
Long time ago.
Yep.
I was still working in terrestrial radio at that point.
It's a long time.
And I haven't worked in terrestrial radio essentially in 9 years.
Yeah.
Long time ago.
Yes.
As Tyler's counting over there what year that might be. Yeah, long time ago. Look, I like what you said there. Split exposure on this fight. I think that's a good one. There's another fight later on the card I'll talk about where I think it is definitely a fight you have to have. Of course, our opening fight of the main card will be it's the young gun against the veteran. This is classic UFC matchmaking. Anthony Smith taking on Jimmy Crute. Jimmy Crute a minus 190 betting favorite in this one. Anthony Smith plus 165. So when I first started looking at the salaries on both slates, I looked at it and said, man, is Anthony Smith going to be a popular play? And at the end of the day, once these fights are over, are you going to kick yourself up? Why the hell did I play Anthony Smith? Or is Anthony Smith going to say, y'all must have forgot?
Well, I mean, I think this is another pivotal matchup, right? Like I was looking at this fight and I'm like, you know what? It could go one of two ways. We've seen Anthony Smith get absolutely beat from pillar to post against Glover Teixeira. but it's Glover Teixeira. And look what he's done recently. I mean, his recent hot stretch is amazing, and he's now fighting for the title. So I'm excited to see Jimmy Crute go up against, Anthony Smith here. And, Anthony Smith, even against Devin Clark, he just has like lapses in fights where he can get absolutely dominated, or like he's foggy while he's in there. Like, I don't know if he's lethargic at points, but he does have fight ending potential. And, the one thing hanging over Jimmy Crute is how he lost that fight to Serkinov. Like, you're supposed to be this extremely talented grappler. You come from a good camp with, great judo, good grappling. He's just well-rounded. And then you get out-scrambled by Misha Serkinov because you got a little too overzealous, and you got caught in a submission, a beautiful submission, and got tapped out. Anthony Smith is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. I think he forgets that sometimes. We did see it in his previous bout against Devin Clark. Nice triangle. But Jimmy Crute will have the wrestling advantage in this fight. Standing up, I'm interested to see how Jimmy Crute handles some adversity, because I do think that despite what Anthony Smith is in 2021, I do think that, he is surrounded by James Krause. He will have a good strategy. He has decent volume and decent technique. So I'm going to be splitting exposure here, but I'm definitely favoring Jimmy Crute in the matchup.
By the way, our man Tyler in chat letting us know in 2010, he was in the 7th grade. I feel really old at this point.
Damn. Yeah, me too, man. Me too.
I feel really old, man.
What are you doing?
40. I turned a big 40 this year, so man, yeah, make me feel a little old over here. I will say this: Anthony Smith, if he can show durability in this matchup, that might be a live betting type position with him, especially maybe Anthony Smith wins in round 3. That's an 18-1 line right now.
Ooh, I like it when you're finding these nice little these gems for us. But I will agree. Like, this is a big step up of competition for Jimmy Crute. Let's be real. Anthony Smith has 50 fights. He's seen it all. He has some pretty notable wins, pretty notable submissions, pretty notable knockouts. But he was the legend killer for a reason, because he was fighting a lot of fighters on their way out of the UFC or at the tail end of their career. I do think that Jimmy Crute's the real deal. But as far as underdogs, prioritize having Anthony Smith over a lot of other fighters.
Before we move on to the next fight, do got to offer some congratulations to our very own Steve Buzzard, who came in tied for first place last week in the big DraftKings GPP. He's a part of that Awesemo Hall of Fame. You want to be in the Awesemo Hall of Fame? Download that avatar, the Awesemo avatar, place in the top 3 of a contest of over 5,000 entries. Tweet your wins to our Twitter account at Awesemo HOF account, and you can win a free month of Also Plus Platinum. Always love seeing those winners up there, as I got to figure out what I'm doing in that big GPP over on DraftKings coming on Saturday. I got to find that right combination. Of course, last week it was about finding that combination of Jacob Malkoun and not having Drakkar Klose or Jeremy Stephens in your lineup.
Yeah, I mean, there are some situations outside of your control. That absolutely stunk. And some of my best lineups that had Jacob Malkoun had Jeremy Stephens in it. So, when you're right on one thing, you get kind of, on another. But it's going to be different is okay with MMA, because a lot of people are thinking with logic and not by ownership.
Yeah, I will tell you, I did a 20 max last week. And so right when that's canceled, can't change anything out, I put my lineups into Excel spreadsheet and I just blacked out. Put a black paintbrush over it, and literally half my lineups were dead. I was like, okay. So now it was like, okay, let me highlight which lineups I've got a full roster in. And that was when I started coming through. I had one lineup going into the main card that was still sitting in good shape because I had Jessica Penne, even though I didn't think Jessica won the fight. I thought Lupe Godinez got the win there. But yeah, so those are, when you can it kind of helps, because sometimes I just don't like going on my DraftKings or FanDuel app because I really don't want to see some scores sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a bummer when you're at the top at the beginning, or and then you just start dropping. But that's why, like, for me, the title fights, like, I think of them and view them as like late night hammers. I want to have exposure to them because I know if my lineups are still doing well, there's still potential for me to accrue more points.
Yeah, and I think especially with this card, with having three 5-round fights because of 3 title fights, they are definitely fights that you have to look at. Now, our prelim headliner is going to be Alex Cowboy Oliveira and Randy Brown. Randy Brown 8,700 over on the other side, 7,500, 16 and 12 respectively over on FanDuel. What's your take on this one?
Yeah, I mean, you got the wild man, Cowboy Oliveira, who I feel like has fought so much in the UFC and has been one of the most inconsistent fighters in the UFC. Yeah. You've seen him at times, miss weight, fatigue in the octagon, get put in some bad positions, but he does have some decent wins. I mean, a win over Carlos Condit, Will Brooks, who I thought was going to materialize into more in the UFC, even Max Griffin split decision. But I mean, this is going to be a grinding type of fight, you would imagine, because both men do enjoy getting into the clinch and mixing it up, going takedown for takedown. And they also love to bomb it on the feet. So to this point, right, like there are just so many things about Cowboy Oliveira that I just can't trust as far as his cardio, his training, even the skills, like defensively, he's just too reckless for me. And I think a guy like Randy Brown can capitalize and potentially get him out of there. Now, it's not my favorite spot for DraftKings, but I do like Randy Brown in the matchup. And I think that it's always sneaky when you can get a guy that's, below 9,000 that could potentially pop for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of those guys that you have to look at in terms of ownership of ultimately where he comes in at. And if he's got low ownership, I think Randy Brown is potentially, I mean, how many times do you sit on the show and say, hey, look in the middle range, look underneath that 9,000. Who is that, 8,400 to 8,800 fighter that's not going to be owned that really can be a leverage spot for you?
Yeah, I think anytime when you're under that 9,000 range, that's where you should start to look of how can you get different from the field or who's going overlooked. Like, I believe it was Austin Hubbard last week, like was in a sneaky spot and came through and he did well. And a guy like Abdul Razak Al Hassan, who was priced up more than he was, he busted. So where's he at in his career right now? It's pretty quite the fall of a career. But this week
I can't stop a takedown.
Awesome. I know, but he can't stay on the feet now either, because you're worried about him getting knocked out. It's just there's so many question marks and volatility surrounding him.
And you talk about this all the time of why MMA DFS is a tough sport is because just one little thing changes the fight. There's you can talk about the analytical side of DFS like we talk about the analytical side of other sports. What makes it tough about MMA is one takedown, one knockdown can change anything. And maybe it's something that happened in a previous fight. I mean, you look at what has Al Hassan been able to do since getting knocked out by Chaos Williams.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was a big fall in his career. And then you also, take into consideration injuries that happen, some crazy situations like last week with the Jeremy Stevens, Drakkar Klose, that fight getting scratched. But I would say the number one tilting thing about MMA DFS has to be the judging, right? Like you can have a fighter that should win the fight, or if they got the victory, like say Alex Munoz last week, it was a tough fight, but I think that he solidified some rounds with some takedowns. If he got that W, he would have had a great score. But yeah, MMA judging makes it difficult.
Next up, we got Dwight against Stephan. Dwight Grant, 9,200 over on DraftKings, $20 over on FanDuel, a minus 220 betting favorite. If I can talk right, betting favorite. What's your take on this one, Pete?
Yeah, I'm not too interested in Dwight Grant. He's coming off a knockout loss to Daniel Rodriguez, obviously. But there's question marks surrounding Sekulic as well from a PED suspension. I'm always interested when I see a fighter from that region coming into the UFC because I know the background that they have. I know that, whether they're from Serbia or Dagestan, that they bring a different type of MMA game to the octagon. And if you don't have good training partners that can replicate it in the training room, it's tough to prepare for. And I will say that Sekulic, he has a ton of finishes via punches. Also has a sneaky ground game as well, where he hunts for a lot of guillotine chokes. I like him everywhere. I really do. Outside of a big shot from Dwight Grant, I think that Sekulic, as long as most of his career wasn't due to being on PEDs. I think he's an interesting GPP target to look at, to circle. I think that he could be going completely overlooked. 7,000. I kind of like him.
Yeah, I can't see myself having a lot of Dwight Graham. I mean, it's a high price tag. You got to pay, but you bring up a great point with Stefan. Last time he fought was 2018, had the PED suspension. What does he look like? And maybe with a little bit of unknowns there to go in there. Of course, got a ton of other fights to still break down here. Of course, when you're looking for the betting odds, you got to check out Odd Shopper at Awesemo.com. Of course, one of the biggest edges you can get in sports betting is always shopping to find the best lines. So you got to do that over there at oddshopper.com, whether you're looking for the straight up money line on the fight, or maybe you look to play some of those props. As I always try to mention some of those props that are looking there. Be sure to check out over at oddshopper.awesemo.com, where we compile the best bets available for game lines, player props, player and team futures, all updated in real time. So be sure to check out that over there at oddshopper.awesemo.com. Next up, we got the next fight is, I think, another critical fight in terms of GPPs. I'm glad you agree with me, Pete. I'm glad you're agreeing with me. That would be Brennan Allen and Karl Roberson. Karl 7,800. Brennan is 8,400. This is one of these matchups where I wonder, could we see an early takedown and a submission by Brennan Allen?
Yeah, right. So like this entire card, I think, is going to, depend a lot on recency bias. And I think that's something each week that we can really use to our advantage of who's going overlooked or who is going, potentially overvalued in the spot. And I will say that Brennan Allen against Karl Roberson is a fight that I will prioritize for a lot of my lineups. Now, Brennan Allen, coming off a knockout loss, TKO loss to Sean Strickland, was getting pieced up throughout it. And obviously his path to victory over Karl Roberson is to, eliminate the threat on the feet by taking him down, exposing him on the ground. And with his ground game and his suffocating pressure and relentless submission attack, I like Brennan Allen. But guess what? He's coming off a knockout loss against an accredited K1 striker in Karl Roberson, who's a dangerous threat, man. Like, you guys know I don't like backing a fighter coming off a knockout loss. Never mind when they're going up against, a very, very powerful striker in Karl Roberson. And Roberson has a decent ground game, but not defensive grappling. He's good offensively. He put Marvin Vettori in a sticky situation and was able to, potentially threaten with a rear naked choke. But for me, I will be splitting exposure in this matchup. I will favor Karl Roberson just so slightly because of the knockout power. Fight starts on the feet. He's a big, strong guy. If he can defend maybe the lethargic takedowns of Brennan Allen, I think he could work towards a TKO.
Next up, we got Pat Sabatini making his UFC debut. Of course, that UFC debut was supposed to take place earlier this year, but his opponent missed weight. Takes on Tristan Connolly. Of course, Tristan Connolly, a guy that we hit on, was it last year? When he got that win on Michel Pereira. He is coming back from a injury. That's why he's been on the sideline here. What's your take, man?
Yeah, fighting each other, Pat Sabatini and Tristan Connolly, I think it's an interesting matchup, but really not a fight that I will be prioritizing based on the toughness of each of these guys, the grappling of each of these guys. I do like Pat Sabatini. I think that he has a nice, well-rounded skill set, probably the better striking of the two, and I will give him the edge in the grappling as well. Even though Tristan Connolly's no slouch, can win rounds. He had better fight IQ than Michel Pereira did in that fight, and that's how he was able to get the victory. But I do feel like maybe that's kind of inflating his stock, so to speak. I think that, a guy like Pat Sabatini, who comes out of Renzo Gracie, Philly, will be well prepared and has all the skills to get a victory here. I favor Pat Sabatini.
Next up, we have got Don Bagarel taking on Kevin Nativad, 8,500 and 7,700 respectively in this one. Is this a fight we need to be targeting?
It's a sneaky fight, right? Because Kevin Natividad is coming off a knockout defeat, right? A bad one, like a really bad one. And you guys know I don't like targeting fighters coming off of that, but I can't forget about the camp and his game. Like, he comes from a very, very strong camp. And if he goes the grappling and the takedown well, I think that he can make this fight interesting. Now, going against Bakary, he's a fighter out of Jackson Wink, has nice hands, some dynamite in his hands, so he could easily knock out Kevin Natividad. I will be splitting exposure here, but to get an underdog with a path to victory, 7,700 Kevin Natividad, you have my attention because I think that he understands, hey, I'm just coming off a knockout defeat. I got to be careful in here. I got to work at takedowns. If he stands and strikes against Bakary, I probably would favor Bakary there, but I will say that Natividad's a nice underdog that I will be targeting, and I'm surprised that I even like him here, but I do.
Now, the first 3 fights of this card, I feel like these are fights you got to be really diving deep on with the 3 Chinese fighters. So let's first talk off about the matchup between Vargas and Zhu here. Zhu making his UFC debut. When you look at his strength of schedule, so he's coming off a win in January. Opponent was 9-7. For that, 17-5. 0-4, 10-9, 18-5, 0-1. So it's kind of a back and forth in terms of strength of schedule. What have you found on tape?
I will say that he's a very aggressive fighter, and that's why you see a ton of finishes for Rujong here. I'm not too impressed with Rodrigo Vargas at all. Like, he's pretty slow on the feet, with takedowns as well. Like, he just seems to be there. He's just present, and he doesn't really threaten too much. Regionally, he does have some finishes, so obviously you always have to look at that and take those into consideration. But a guy like Rong Zhu, I feel like it's just going to have an answer for him. 17-3 fighter. I'm interested to see these fighters coming from the PI. Like, obviously, they're probably going to be in great shape, but how is their training regimen like? Were they able to be surrounded by talented training partners, or did they have minimal training partners? We won't really know that until the fights pop off. But I like Rujong here. I think that he's the ace out of the fight, and this is a low-level opponent in the UFC, Rodrigo Vargas.
Do you want to pay the 9,100 price tag, though?
It's hard, right? Like, I will have some of him because of just the amount of lineups I will be playing. But with the other title fights, it makes roster construction very difficult. So, you're going to have only 2, maybe only one of them, and you have to pick the correct one.
The second fight of the night has a fighter that I'm very familiar with, and Jeffrey Molina trains out of Glory MMA Fitness there in Lee, Missouri, taking on Aurora here. So this is your 8,200, 8,000 matchup. Tell me a little bit about this Chinese fighter.
Yeah, so Aori Qilang against Jeff Molina. Molina is a fighter out of James Krause's gym, which I think is interesting. Obviously, it's a hot gym. And whenever you're out of Glory, you have our attention, right? Like, we always back those fighters. But I will say that, he's a good striker, solid grappler as well. But Aori Qilang seems like he has the power advantage on the feet. Whereas I will say that Jeff Molina is more of a volume guy, pitter-patter, touch you, overwhelm you with volume, work towards a decision. I like Aori Qilang as far as, getting a finish. It's just these guys, it's a well-matched fight where I feel like they're both able to test each other in both departments, grappling, striking. It's hard for me to really put a stamp on who I like, but I do think that Aori Qilang could get it done based on the power and potentially hurting him on the feet. I understand Jeff Molina looked great on the Contender Series, but I have to side with, Aori Qilang just slightly.
Then in the opening matchup of the night, Na Liang 15-4, but strength of schedule, a little
suspect. Yeah. For me, I'm not too impressed. I'm impressed with Liang Na, but I don't like this matchup for her against Ariane Carnelossi. The reason I don't like the matchup for her in this fight against Ariane Carnelossi is because Carnelossi is just not a striker, right? She just got her Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. She's very talented. She has a lot of submission grappling experience. And, Liang Na, outside of an armbar from guard or just, flying armbar, flying submission, I don't really see how she's going to win rounds against Ariane Carnelossi. And I think Carnelossi is kind of sneaky, Jason, because, I think she's going to maybe work towards finishing her. Carnelossi is a very, very powerful fighter. And I'm excited. I'm excited to see this matchup. I don't hate you if you want to target Liang, but 8,600 Carnelossi could be one of the sneakiest plays on the entire slate.
Yeah, minus 220 betting favor in that one. Let's go through our straight up fight picks, not DFS related, just straight up fight picks. Let's start right with the title fights. Kamaru Usman, Jorge Masvidal.
I'm going Usman.
I'm going Usman as well. Wiley Zhang and Rose Namajunas.
I am going Namajunas.
Give me the champion.
Okay.
Shevchenko versus Andrade. Give me the champ.
Yeah, Shevchenko for me.
I feel like it's not the smartest thing for me to pick the 3 champions because I feel like the likelihood is at least one belt changes hands.
Yeah, I mean, initially I liked all 3, but after watching tape and trying to get different, I do like Rose Namajunas.
Uriah Hall, Chris Weidman.
Uriah Hall.
I'm gonna go Uriah Hall. I thought you might go Chris Weidman. Yeah, give me Hall. Give me Jimmy Crute against Anthony Smith.
Yeah, Jimmy Crute for me as well.
I will go Randy Brown.
Randy Brown.
Dwight Grant as a 2-1 betting favorite. I'll take him.
Give me Sekulic.
I do like Brennan Allen against Carl Roberson. I think he goes the takedown route.
I love Brennan Allen, but I think I'm going Carl Roberson.
I was waiting for the butt. I can sense it coming. Coming here. Give me Pat Sabatini against Tristan Connor.
I like Sabatini's prospect a lot within the division.
What do you got in the next one? I'm guessing are you gonna go with the favorite Bathgari?
Yeah, I like Baccarel, but like Kevin Natividad has my attention for DFS purposes. But as far as straight up picks, I like Baccarel.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Any chance you're gonna take Vargas? I'm gonna say no based on what you said a little earlier.
Yeah, not really. I like Rongju quite a bit.
Yeah. Molina and Iori. I'm gonna go Molina. Gotta go with my guy there.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna go Aori Keelang.
And I'm gonna go Ariane in the opening.
Ariana Carnelossi. Sneaky spot right there.
Yeah. Mentioned we got a super chat a little earlier from Samuel. I know he couldn't stick around the show, but said he's going to watch us after the fact. So let's just start top 2 cash.
I think top 2 cash would be easy, right? You go Shevchenko and Usman, but have literally no salary left. But
yeah,
that's probably what I would say.
Yeah. Top 2 GPP. Usman's got to be number 1.
He has the highest ceiling. And
exactly. That's why
I might say Shevchenko's number 2.
MVP and champion. In terms of the FanDuel side of the equation, I think it kind of goes to what we said there before. I think Kamaru Usman, maybe a sneaky champion is who you think is going to win in that co-main event.
I like it. I like the thinking there. I'm telling you, I think Rose Namajunas gets takedowns.
Top inside the distance. I would look at Brennan Allen would be one that I would look at.
I would look at either one of them.
I think Usman Masvidal goes the distance. I think Zhang Namajunas goes the distance. I do think Shevchenko stops Andrade at some point.
Really?
Yes.
I would say that I think the Brennan Allen Carl Roberson fight, that one's probably going to end. I kind of like Randy Brown via finish too, to be honest.
Okay. Who will break the slate?
Somebody we're not talking about. That's who's going to break the slate.
Well, I mean, I think first off, you have to look at the 3 underdogs in the title fights, because even if one of them win and they score, let's say 80 points, the reality is they're probably going to be optimal.
100%. Yeah. And if you're on the wrong side of that, or say you roster too many favorites on a card like this, it's hard to roster so many favorites on the card like this. But initially, I didn't like too many underdogs. You're going to have to get different in this card, I'm telling you.
Based on ownership, some sleeper picks. I think a sleeper pick, I will mention Randy Brown.
I like Randy Brown. I like Ariana Carnelossi quite a bit.
Uriah Hall is another interesting in terms of.
Ooh, I like Uriah. Because listen, people are desperate for a notable name within the 7K range to get them points, especially being a grappler.
Do you have 2 favorite locks?
Yeah, come on.
Favorite word?
Yeah, I don't say that word, guys. Come on, I don't say that word. I will say I really, really, really like Randy Brown and Ariana Carnelosi.
All right. All right. What is your favorite underdog for GPP?
Well, favorite underdog for GPP, right? Let's think. Let me rank this by salary. I would probably say that Jessica Andrade has the most potential as an underdog based on her volume, her takedowns, her aggressiveness, her power, and her price. She's the cheapest on the slate, probably going to get beat from pillar to post, but she has some of the most potential on the slate at her price.
Yeah. But of course, we'll be back on Saturday live before lock to answer your questions. Dan mentioned Weidman possibly sneaky to me. I would agree with that one. Weidman could be a sneaky one if he can utilize the takedown aspect. I think if it's on the feet, I think it could be a very long night for Chris Weidman.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I'm interested to see these fights go down. I hope that, fingers crossed, we keep all the fights. If you guys really enjoyed our show, we appreciate you a lot. Just hit that like button for us. Try to get us to 100 likes. I'd really appreciate it. I forgot to ask the last time. But, yeah, you guys got to do me that favor, and we'll be back next time to talk about, this card once again.
And don't forget, free premium data and tools on the site here today is MMA fighter ranking. So you can check that out. Also, be sure to take advantage of that promo we got going on. Half off Awesemo Plus MMA monthly, $14.98. Take advantage of that deal. Of course, be sure to subscribe to Awesemo so you get all the great content we have here. And of course, you'll get me and Pete tomorrow as we're going to be breaking down the Monkey Knife Fight player props. So be sure to check out that. 1 p.m. Eastern time is when that will debut tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that. So that is going to do it for this edition of the Also MMA DFS Strategy Show. And we will be here all week getting you ready for Saturday's UFC 261. Good night, everyone.